to here. It's ridiculous.
Spanx up to the tits.
I mean, on behalf of the group, I'd prefer you wear Spanx all the time, just to kind of hike those puppies up to Canada for our benefit.
On behalf of our YouTube thumbnails.
Yeah, for sure, Jen. Now that we're doing YouTube, get your tits out.
Okay. I do realize that I could make so much money if I talked about Congress without a shirt on.
Yeah,
Made
go
like
for
an
it.
OnlyFans.
Didn't Russia have like naked news for a while, where like they would just like read the news off of a teleprompter,
Yeah.
but they would just like take off their shirt little bit by little bit?
It's a there was a whole OnlyFans. I can't remember what the topic was.
And then like on Twitch, didn't it turn into like cake sitting? Like at one point they were like, basically,
That's just another fetish. All right, that's probably too big.
yeah.
Smaller.
Still don't know how to sit like a fucking lady.
I like this jacket. This is new.
Yeah, it's nice.
It's got almost like a mustard color to it. Mm-hmm. I gone to the gym the last 2 days. I'm going back to the gym.
How'd that go?
Good. I'm
Which
kind of
gym?
sore. There's Crux has an annex, so the rock climbing place has an annex that's just like
Oh yeah.
like at the like
It's,
right at the road from me, and so I can like it's good because what I figured out is the further away the gym is from my house, the less likely I am to go.
Yep.
Oh, perfect.
So I need one in my
Actually, I
building.
think that one's probably going to be. All right. Great, thank you. Yeah, like if I have to drive, 50% chance I won't do it.
Yeah. Well, that's nice.
Is this about the right distance you want?
As long as we can see your mouth.
Okay, but this is about 3 fists away.
Yes. No, that's fine.
Okay, great.
One of my problems with going to the gym, at least since I no longer had a trainer, was I don't know what the hell to do when it comes to weightlifting. So I've started using this app called Fitbod, and it's basically having like a personal trainer in my pocket.
Nice.
So it starts the weights off way too high. So with every exercise, I had to be like, nope, can't do that. But once I got it trained to me, it's just been slowly increasing everything. And it's so nice to show up and just have a plan. So I'm not
Yeah.
just like, I don't know what to do next.
Does it change it every day?
Every day. Depending
Really?
on like so yesterday I worked biceps, so tomorrow will probably be triceps. It kind of tells you where your muscle groups are at. And then if I don't do it for 3 or 4 days, it's like, all your muscle groups are fine. Come back to the gym. So Joe and I are both loving it and actually consistently weightlifting for the first time in approximately 20 years.
And what's it called? Fitbod?
Fitbod.
Fitbod. Okay, I might check that out. Like, 'cause I'm like one of my friends taught me into doing an app with a trainer, which I'm sure is like stupidly expensive compared to that app.
Yeah,
And,
mine I think was $70 for the year, something like that, and worth every penny.
Okay.
I really like it, and it wants you to rest in between, and so there's a little timer that automatically goes on. So I'll say I want to be in the gym for 45 minutes, and I'm
Perfect.
done in 45 minutes.
Yeah, because that's the other bit is I get really, really bored in the gym.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be there for more than about 40 minutes. And so,
too.
yeah.
Actually, can you bring that a little closer to your face?
Here?
Yeah. Keep talking.
I get like boredom's a very big impediment for me in
too.
terms of going to the gym. That sounds greater because like my friend Sarah talked me and she's like, you should totally get this app. There's you get a personal trainer and they talk to you and stuff. And I was like, okay, but like that sounds like it's basically the same thing for less money.
Yeah, and you can play your own music on top of it because it doesn't say anything to you. The other thing I like is that it has so for every exercise it tells you to do, it has a video of someone doing the exercise and an explanation in words,
Right, nice.
and telling you which part of the body you're supposed to be working. Because sometimes I'll do the exercise and be like, I don't even know what I'm trying to accomplish here. So with that much information, I feel like I'm doing it in a way that I'm probably not going to get injured. So
No, that would be helpful because I don't know what I'm doing. Like I'm just like a big fleshy hinge trying to move it in the right way, and like then I'll like talk to somebody who knows what they're doing, and they're like, "Are you squeezing those muscles?" And I'm like, "What now? No." And they're like, "Well, you got to squeeze those muscles." And I'm like, "Oh, all right. I just thought I was picking up a rock."
I still
and setting
think
it
that
down."
you should exclusively use 1930s weight equipment. That you should have a weight belt and a full leotard.
Yeah.
And then it's nothing but like Hindu squats and lifting kettlebells.
It's the Canadian Regiment's calisthenics thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I also find that I have certain exercise machines that I enjoy, so I'll just do those over and over again. So I'll end up with like huge biceps, but the rest of my body is just limp noodle status. So it forces me to do the shit that I hate, which is important.
All right. Well, things we don't hate are gifts from our listeners. That came in.
And it's only for me?
It's jewelry. Spoiler alert. But
okay.
Ashley got some, and so she already took that out. But I believe this is for you.
Okay. Bag. It says you're turtly awesome, and it's a cute little turtle. And then, oh my God, these are super cute. It says to Jen from Emily at Bunch of Beads Boutique. I love these. Oh, these are awesome. Thank you very much, Emily.
There we go.
Show them to the camera.
How lovely.
Yeah.
And a lot of our lady listeners keep sending me their underwear, which I'm very flattered by. I assume I'm not supposed to wear it. I've not been wearing it. I just put it in a binder. And thank you for that.
I could have used some underwear today.
Would you like that underwear, Jen? You can have it. It's very lacy.
Was my comment being recorded?
What?
The reason I'm looking good today.
No, you can go ahead and repeat that.
Oh yeah, I ran out of underwear today, and so I'm wearing Spanx over my entire body.
She looks great.
Yeah, the boys like that it's pushing my boobs up.
It's yeah. The tits are out.
For the record,
the tits are out.
For the record, I said, Jen, you look terrific today.
YouTube.com/@we're not wrong. By the way,
the green shirt you're wearing is very flattering on your figure. Something to that effect.
That's the way you put it.
Yeah.
And I said it's because I'm wearing Spanx up to my tits.
Yeah. And that was polite heat and speak. For this is a great breast day for Jen. She looks terrific.
It's looking good. By the way,
Well, thank you.
I got this in the mail, Jen.
I want it. Yeah. How did you get that?
Justin
is
showing
people,
a C-SPAN vest for listeners.
Yeah.
It says C-SPAN 2024. I want that.
Yeah.
Was it Howard?
Yeah.
Oh, Howard, I
just want to say this. Howard sends me his underwear regularly, and I'm very flattered by that. I don't wear it. I put it in a binder. Thank you, Howard.
Although this is a ladies. They sent me a ladies medium.
So it's meant for me.
Meh. Or it's a reminder that I need to keep this year's stress eating under control. Because right now I look really good in it, but boy, is it on a razor wire when it comes to the belly section.
It actually looks really good on you.
Everybody's
I think
wearing
it does look
Spanx
good.
but Heaton. I need to get some Spanx.
It's like some sexy twink style when you wear it.
It does, yeah. No, it makes me look like I'm a superhero or in the Merchant Marines. Like I'm not a good superhero. I'm like an assistant or something.
Nice.
Yeah.
I know.
jealous.
She's just eyeing it.
I'm really
She's just
jealous.
waiting,
I like that a lot. That belongs on me.
Justin, I'm gonna purchase one of those for me, and then get patches to sew on both of ours that say "best friends," just to like really,
just to really
make
drive it
Jen-
in.
Yeah.
I think I'm just gonna come over here, get you drunk, and steal it.
Try. I mean, it's after dry January, so we're
there you
back
go.
in business. We're back in business.
It's Super Bowl Sunday.
Yeah.
It's a good
Do we have any
opportunity.
Super Bowl picks? Any props?
I want to see Taylor Swift kissing Kelsey on the 50-yard line after it, just to
So you got
piss off
Chiefs
the
money
dum-dums.
line.
I also think the Chiefs they're hot right now. They're
Yeah.
they haven't looked this good all season. I just think that they're hot, and the other side is Brock Purdy, who is a 4-year-old fourth-string quarterback. Like, I don't know. I think Mahomes is probably going to
How
take
about
it.
Andrew Heaton Sports Prognostication of the Week? Brock Purdy. Is he for real?
Brock Purdy is very much for real. You could bend horseshoes around that reality, Brock Purdy. But I, as per usual, will be rooting for referees and teamsmanship.
By the way, if there's anything that could bring you into the Super Bowl, it is what happened yesterday as we record this, or maybe 2 days ago. Media Day is a circus in the calendar of the Super Bowl because you have all this foreign media that never covers sports, but they are made available, or all the players are made available to ask legendarily ridiculous questions, just totally off the beaten path. And one of them, Brock Purdy, the quarterback for the 49ers, was asked if he had seen on the internet that people are comparing him visually to Lee Harvey Oswald.
Wow. Wow.
Funny. It's
And by the way,
though.
funny, something that Brock Purdy didn't find that question. he was like,
Really?
no, I would like to not be compared to Lee Harvey Oswald. Thank you.
Well, that's too bad because I see it. That's funny.
You said that with a little bass in your voice, like that was
No,
like
it's-
a good thing.
No, it's just
Have you in the
interesting
past looked at
comparison.
Lee Harvey Oswald and said, "Ooh, what a dish"?
I mean, take apart the whole assassination part of his
Let's
personality.
put that aside.
He's
Let's
not the
There's
worst.
just one facet of an interesting historical figure.
Yeah, he's a lanky, tall, white dude. It's kind of my type.
It is the demo. He's
Yeah.
in your demo.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, I bet he would kill for me. So
From Austin, Texas, I'm Justin Robert Young.
I'm Jen Briney.
And I'm Andrew Heaton.
And we're not wrong on this edition of the program. We will be discussing Tucker Carlson's trip to Russia to interview Vladimir Putin, as well as mistrust in the Arizona GOP after a insane surreptitious recording scandal broke between Carrie Lake and the former head of that organization. All of that, along with your emails. But we begin with Tucker Carlson. The former Fox News host is at the center of speculation about a potential interview with Russian President Vladimir Putin during his current trip to Moscow. Carlson's presence in Russia's capital, spotted in places like the Bolshoi Theater and dining at his hotel, have fueled rumors, and then they were confirmed by Carlson himself in a video posted to X, formerly Twitter. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov, asked about the possibility of the interview, did not confirm or deny it. But Peskov did emphasize Russia's openness with foreign journalists. Carlson's potential interview holds significance, as it would mark the first time a Western journalist has interviewed President Putin since the onset of the Ukraine war. Carlson is known for his critical stance of U.S. support for Ukraine and controversial comments about Ukrainian President Zelensky. So, what is the definition between propaganda and journalism, and where does this one fall? Jen Briney.
Well, it would be pretty hypocritical of me to trash Tucker Carlson for this, considering I did something somewhat similar. I obviously didn't interview Putin himself.
I was going to say.
I don't. Was this when you went on a double date with Dmitry Medvedev a couple years ago?
No, I dated Putin himself, obviously.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah. When they call me a Putin lover, it is literal. No, after the Ukraine war started, I was getting extremely irritated with idiot pundits trying to tell us all how Putin thinks. And I was like, well, Putin actually gave an hour-long speech telling us exactly why he invaded Ukraine. And so I took that speech and I made a Congressional Dish episode out of it, just to be like, you know, there's a lot of speculation for why this war is happening. Let's hear it from the man himself. And people got really pissed at me, but I felt like it was an important thing to do, as opposed to having Western pundits guess. Like, he told us why he did it. And I think at this point, I'm really glad that Tucker was granted the interview, because I think someone needs to ask him. There's only one question I hope that Tucker asks, and I'll be shocked if he doesn't, but I want
Why
to know.
are you so dreamy?
Well,
Although he's not
that's
that tall. He's not that tall though. So he's out of your demo.
Yeah. I want to know, what do you want? What do you want to end the war? I think it's an important question, especially coming from our side. And
So what do you want in terms of endgame? Because I think
Yeah.
it's clear what he wanted in terms of starting
What
the
would
war.
you need
Yeah.
for a ceasefire would be a
Exactly.
similar question of like, this is something that I've thought for a long time. Like, if I were Anthony Blinken or whoever, and we're in this now, you know, multi-year conflict that could go on for a very long time, I would love for whatever our chief diplomat is to pick up the phone and go, what would you theoretically need? Doesn't mean we're committing to it, but like theoretically, if Putin said, I want to guarantee that Ukraine does not join NATO, and then I would give back all the territory I took. Like, I'd say that's a pretty good deal if that were the case. Unlikely, but I'd want to hear it.
I would imagine that there has to be conversations like that. There has to be back channel. If there's not, that is an absolute dereliction of duty.
But this is an administration that talks about diplomatic relations as if it's some sort of prize. Like, when a country does something wrong, they're like, well, we've cut off diplomatic relations. And we did that with Russia a long time ago. So just knowing how Joe Biden has operated and just listening to the things that he said, I actually think there is a chance that we're not talking to them at all. I think there is a chance of that.
I mean,
every day Putin slinks into the Kremlin and goes, "Did the red phone ring?" And they're like, no, but did you dust it? We dusted it. Okay, because if he rings, I want him to know it's in good condition. Sir, he can't tell that the phone has been dusted. It's an audio-only medium. Just keep doing it.
Yeah. Can you unplug it and plug it back in? I don't think this phone's working.
But, regardless of what's happening in the Biden administration, I'm glad that there's someone outside and, in fact, adversarial to the Biden administration who's going to be asking these questions. Because I don't particularly trust the State Department, no matter who's in charge of it at this point, to be telling us the truth. And so and Tucker did say in his 5-minute video, as of this recording of We're Not Wrong, the interview with Vladimir Putin has not been aired, so we don't know what's in it. But he did say he's going to release it unedited as it is. I think the world needs to see this. And for Tucker Carlson to be taking any hit for doing this, I did notice that Christiane Amanpour, who I think is one of the best journalists ever, she's highly respected, she was saying that they've been trying to get this interview for years.
And that was confirmed by the Kremlin. They said one of the things that they actually pushed back on in Tucker Carlson's video was that he was the only Western journalist that was trying. The Kremlin said, well, a lot of people have reached out. We did not approve any of them because we did not feel that it was going to be anything other than propaganda from the American side. Mm-hmm. We did not trust any outlet to sit down and have the conversation. Now, trust the Kremlin. And I guess this is where the secondary thing comes in of, from the journalistic point of view, how much do you lay out for somebody that is obviously in the middle of a war and has no responsibility to how much do you not challenge them? How much do you frame the interview in any kind of way? It frames the way that you're going to ask questions. In general, all right, if you were just walking down the street and you saw something happen, the person that witnessed it, you're going to ask very exploratory questions. You're not really going to push back on them all that much. When you're dealing with a war, any kind of war reporting, and this is something I would like to see more on the American side too, but you should have a healthy amount of skepticism to anything that they are saying, because when there are troops in the battlefield, there's no responsibility for anybody on any level of a government or a military to tell you the truth. They're going to tell you what they believe will get them to their aims. That's why they have committed all the money and lives that they have to this conflict. I don't know if Tucker's style of interviewing is going to particularly push us forward in any sense like that, but I do think that it is not out of bounds for him to do it. And I think it's kind of telling that in an era where in the past we had major media outlets that would send their top talent.
Dan Rather went and interviewed Saddam Hussein.
Mm-hmm. Right? Like, this is stuff that's happened before in the past. It's just that now, television anchors don't mean the same that they used to.
Well, and Tucker isn't corporate sanctioned anymore. Tucker's an independent journalist at this point, and I think that there's a lot of jealousy right now in the corporate media that they didn't get this interview. Because we know that Amanpour, she's a CNN anchor. We know that these other networks wanted it, and it was a non-network, a guy who's he's going to release this on his own website and on Twitter. So it's just another way that cable news or corporate news really, is losing their status.
He is also Ukraine skeptical. I think that there is a reason why he got it, and it's because he has been critical of Zelensky. He's been critical of Ukraine.
I think part of the reason that he's catching flack is that we're living in a period where platforming and deplatforming are active conversations within fields of journalism. I am of the opinion that I'm not going to criticize a journalist for doing their job. Part of being a journalist is interviewing people, and the idea that journalists have to selectively pick who is a good person or who is a bad person, and if they interview a person that we don't like, they're somehow adding to their power, I think is a nonsensical, non-journalistic approach. There's benefit to hearing from these people, even if they're bad. So, like, Jen, in your case, when you played the cut together a episode about what Putin said, that doesn't mean that you or anybody listening thinks that he 100% believes all of those things and you're reporting the gospel truth. What you're doing is you're reporting on what Vladimir Putin said and what he wants people to think. It doesn't mean you have to believe him, but it's worthwhile hearing it.
From the man himself.
Yeah, like I would love to sit down and talk with Vladimir Putin about why he purports that the war began, what brought us to this, and what we would need to get out of it. It doesn't mean he's being truthful to me, but I would like to hear his explanation because that's still useful information. And if Tucker Carlson is able to do that, great. It would be wonderful if he pushed back a lot. I'm not somebody good at that. I don't really push back when I do interviews. So, like, I'm probably not the guy to go send over to talk to Vladimir Putin because I would be like, okay, but, like, do we at least agree Star Trek is good? What I would be trying to find consensus
Also, let me just
hard.
say this, for the record. If I were doing this interview, I wouldn't push back because I'd want to get home.
Yeah.
Like Vladimir Putin, for whatever we think about the Ukraine war, for whatever we think about America's involvement in it, does not have a sterling track record with journalists being able to ask the questions that they want inside of his country. So I don't think he's going to detain Tucker Carlson. Do I think that it's in play more than Tucker Carlson interviewing Cat Turd 2? Yes, I do believe that there is the chance for danger when you are interviewing Vladimir Putin in Moscow.
I also don't think it's necessarily necessary to be pushing back against him, because if you're there to try and get his perspective on the situation, you're there to ask questions. You don't necessarily have to be a dick to the guy in order to get, even if he's lying to you, knowing what he wants us to believe is information we need anyway.
I wholeheartedly agree with that.
We should keep this in mind. There's a email about on this subject later.
A few years ago, Ahmadinejad came to, when he was president of Iran, came to NYU and answered questions like, Ahmadinejad, not somebody I like. Iranian government, not something that I like. But, like, this is useful information to have a world leader come and be able to how does this person think? How do they comport themselves? And what are they claiming? These are all very, like, useful things to glean. To go back to an earlier question you asked, I think at the beginning of this conversation, Justin, what is the difference between journalism and propaganda?
Yes.
Because that's, I think, a lot of what this ends up, a lot of the critics of Tucker going over there are going to say he is being used, he is a useful idiot for the propaganda wing of the Kremlin.
Yes.
And I don't think that's the case. Again, I agree with Jen on everything you just said about this being useful information, even if the source itself is suspect. But if we're going to look at this at a more abstract level, I would say the fundamental difference between journalism and propaganda is that of intent. So if I am going in and I am trying to tell a story, find facts, or explain something, even though I have bias, because everybody has bias, that's different than I am willfully trying to carry out the rules of the regime and the desire of the regime. So you could go in there and even quasi-agree with them and stuff, but propaganda is when you've got like a state apparatus that is trying to distribute information very consciously in order to get the masses to agree with whatever the administration wants.
Well, I think the criticism, which I don't agree with at all, but the criticism would be that Tucker would be serving as a tool of that state. So, like, he's being used for propaganda.
Right.
I think it's horseshit, but that's kind of...
And by the way, listeners, get ready for this in 2024, because you're going to be seeing a lot more of this over the next few months. As the ratchet goes up between Biden and Trump, you're going to find more and more journalists criticized for talking to anybody that pundit X doesn't like, where a journalist will interview Marjorie Taylor Greene, and there will now be, outcryings of how dare you give time to this woman? You're increasing her power. I am a very big believer in free press and free speech, and actually, I broadly trust people to be able to use their raw intelligence to discern facts. So I do not think the way to handle things in a democracy is to restrict information to what we believe people can be trusted with. And that's ultimately where this kind of platforming talk goes to, is the idea that you were somehow aiding it. The other bit is kind of like intellectually, I think there's two very different approaches towards bad information. One is to look at information as something that needs to be brought into the light and argued with, that if there is something duplicitous or malicious coming out of Vladimir Putin or anybody else, the way to handle it is to try and get it out into the open and have smarter people argue it to death to where people go, that's wrong. That's what we can broadly say is the liberal approach towards information. The other approach is to look at information as a mental virus that will spread and metastasize unless it's lanced, and that you have to clamp it down and get rid of it. And I think that is a deeply illiberal and authoritarian way of looking at the world. And most of the platforming arguments I see are of that nature, that information is dangerous and cannot spread. I don't think that's the case. I think the way to handle bad information is with more information. It's with more people talking and more people analyzing and allowing the conversation to collapse the bad stuff under its own stupid weight.
And I think a lot of that comes from a mistaken, in my opinion, notion that we had a control of information in the past. And while certainly there were less outlets to broadcast stuff, we just didn't have a measurement on what everybody else was talking about in the meantime. You know, for everybody's like, oh, well, there's a startling rise of awful things that are being said online. It's like, well, or are the people that were just saying it at a bar now saying it on Facebook and it's just recorded? Is there a meaningful uptick in this speech? I don't think so.
I think the idiots and assholes can find each other now. Like previously, the town moron would go to the bar and be like, I think lizard people are trying to make everybody gay or whatever. And everybody like, shut the hell up, Jeremy. But now he can go on the message board and go, wait, you're an asshole too?
But no, but they could find that before. There were mailing lists. Like we live in this world where we think that the John Birch Society wasn't a real thing.
Yeah.
Like all this stuff has existed throughout time. Like you can make an argument that, yes, you can go international with it in a way that you couldn't before. But really, what is the effect of that? That you get all these people together so they can yell and scream. The only time that it matters is when we overemphasize exactly how important they are. Mm-hmm. You know, like this is like the Q thing all over again, where it's several dozen people.
Yeah.
I was thinking about Q the other day. Do you think Q's going to come back if Trump wins? Do you think they're dumb enough to buy it a second time?
Yes. I mean, again, because it's like a lot of the Q stuff wasn't even really about whether or not this was literally real. It was whether or not there was any truth to the idea that these well-worn tropes of elites and Satanism and child trafficking and stuff, if they had teeth. And even then, it was too hot for 4chan. It had to go to 8chan. We're not even talking about mainstream in any way.
Next comes 12chan.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think you're right too. Like, so when I worked in national television news, controversy does really, really well. So does nudity, by the way. So like way back, I think like the week I started or the month I started as a television news writer, Miley Cyrus did a single where she rides a wrecking ball naked.
Yes.
And we really wanted, like I say we, the shows on the network, because I don't think we covered it. The shows on the network really wanted to talk about Miley Cyrus naked on the wrecking ball. And so the narrative became people are outraged that Miley Cyrus rode a wrecking ball naked. And what they meant by that is 8 people on Twitter. And by the way, if you ever need to find somebody offended about anything, you can find them on Twitter. Oh, like there are idiots right now visiting the Grand Canyon giving it 0 stars on Google Yelp reviews. Like that, you can always find an idiot. And then you take those 8 people and you put up their tweets of, this is the destruction of America or whatever. But the reality is that it's not emblematic of 2 camps of the pro Miley Cyrus and the anti Miley Cyrus. It's everybody, 99% of people either think it's cool or don't give a shit. And there's a tiny bit of people that got offended, but we're going to pretend because that makes for a fun story.
Well, it makes for a segment, right?
It makes for a segment.
You can kill a segment where a hot naked woman is on the screen, and you can pretend that you're aghast and not very excited that the hot young naked woman is going to make people stay on your screen so they can watch your Cash for Golds ad that's going to air right after.
Speaking of the other thing that was going on around that time was Sean Hannity was giving like thunderous orations about how spring break has gone too far. Chef's kiss, brilliant, because the B-roll is just bouncing tits. Bouncing tits. 18 to 22-year-old bouncing tits. And there's a guy wagging his finger going, this has gone too far. So you get all of the subtle masturbatory benefit of
they've gone more than
porn.
Wild.
But also the condemnation. You get the condemnation.
So what you're saying is that Tucker is chasing the masturbatory benefit of interviewing Vladimir Putin.
Entirely possible. See, I mean, here's another thing, too, is like, I think that it is very difficult for I think it is a rare journalist who has no self-interest whatsoever in their career ambition. I think that is a fairly big rarity of a journalist that goes, you know what, I really just believe in journalism. I don't care if I ever get a Pulitzer. I don't care if I get more money. I am totally happy to work at the Guthrie Tribune for the rest of my life because I am just a part. I think everybody's chasing their career in journalism, and particularly when you're on camera, there's a lot of ego and ambition there. So in the masturbatory sense of...
those people do exist. They don't exist at that level.
Yeah, and
so you don't get to the Tucker Carlson level unless you have sharp elbows and you understand the pathway.
So there. I mean, like I know you're making a joke, but yeah, like I think that like Tucker's probably to a great extent going good shit, good shit, good shit, good shit, good shit. Like this is a good way to drive people to my show. Like there's definitely a self-interest there.
And he owns.
But I'm fine with that.
He owns the property.
Yeah.
He owns the TCN, the Tucker Carlson network, that as a distribution deal with Twitter. So
I'm excited for him in that regard. I think it's cool that he's gone independent and is getting this big of an interview. Like it's good for independent media. It's good for all of us. That's for sure. Even though Tucker's never been my favorite, but
he taught me to tie a bow tie one time. Did I tell you about that? This is
back in his
unrelated to me.
days.
This is in his bow tie days. This is totally unrelated to me being in television. I was at the time in D.C. I think working as a Segway tour guide, but I was just beginning to do media, and I was working for a group. Like I say, working. I was like moonlighting for free for a group called Cloture Club, which was a lot of fun. And they called me up and they're like, "Do you want to do a video with Tucker Carlson where he teaches you to tie a bow tie? We think that'd be fun." And I was like, "Sure, let's do that." He was still in his bow tie days.
is this during or after Crossfire?
After Crossfire.
So after Crossfire, this is Daily Caller.
This is Daily Caller era,
Gotcha.
and I was told like probably not a good idea to talk to him about Crossfire. He's still kind of
pissed off.
He's still pissed off
Crossfire.
about John
Yeah.
Oliver, or not John Oliver,
Jon
Jon
Stewart.
Stewart. And stuff, and fascinating conversation, and he gave me really good advice. By the way, I probably mentioned this on the program before. Apologies if I'm retreading stuff, but I did a horrible interview. I was brand new at it, and what I really wanted to do was Colbert him. I wanted to go in and be the funny guy.
Yeah.
And Tucker, who is a veteran pro at this point, can see things coming a mile away. So I was trying to set him up for jokes, and I mean, it was like watching Neo just like move a quarter of an inch to avoid bullets the whole time. And he was fine. I did a poor job. This was not a match of equals at that time. And we're packing stuff up. The interview's over, and I went, "Hey, can I ask you a real question?" And he goes, "Yeah." And I go, I don't mean this offensively, but people hate you. Like millions of people hate you. How do you process that millions of people hate you? Because I want to go into political satire, and I'm curious as to how you can take that on the chin." And he went, "I only give a shit about what my family, my friends, and my coworkers think. And if you give a shit about what anybody else thinks, you will be emotionally crippled as a person."
Yeah.
And I think he was frankly right. Like it also explains a lot about Tucker Carlson. But like for the business we're in, like I care very much about what Jen thinks about me and what Justin thinks about me. If I were doing something and one of you approached me and went, "You were being unethical, and like I really think that this is besmirching your character," I would take that very seriously. But if someone on Twitter named like Ass Plunger 432 wanted to pick a fight with me, I should probably give that less credence than I currently do.
But can you tie a bow tie?
I could for a while. I taught myself to tie a bow tie by looking at pictures of Winston Churchill and drinking scotch and just figuring it out.
So Tucker's a bad teacher is what you're saying.
I think he did fine. I don't know. I just haven't tied a bow tie in so long that I don't remember. I do not remember.
Do we have the video? Can we find the video?
I will try to track down this video.
Let's get this video.
Maybe this could be some bonus content for patrons. Or
Oh
something.
my God, I can't imagine.
You will see like
young
26-year-old
Keaton.
Keaton trying to best Tucker Carlson and failing.
Wow.
As a comedian. Very embarrassing video, but I'll try to find it.
Any predictions on what this interview was going to be? I think we are in agreement that it should happen, and we are in agreement that it is not a meaningful propaganda effort for Russia, or at least that Tucker Carlson is not going out of his way. Well, one thing I think I will say before I get your opinions on what might happen is that I do think that this is a sign that we are getting to an end game with it, because Putin's the one deciding that this is going to happen.
Yeah.
Is this confirmed, by the way, or is this just
It's
like
airing tomorrow.
Is it okay?
Yeah. So he decides that he wants to do this. I do think that you've heard leaks about like, oh, well, there might be an end game kind of here. There might be some exchanging of papers on some level somewhere.
We know that there's military to military unsanctioned on the Ukrainian side, but we know that there's been negotiations.
Yeah.
So it's starting behind the scenes. But
and also,
it'll be interesting to see what Putin says.
Putin knows, if in 5 years either Volodymyr Zelensky or Vladimir Putin would be living in an apartment in New York, he knows that it's not him. Yeah. He knows that it would be the other guy. So he's going to be a part of world affairs for as long as he's alive, until Vladimir Putin dies.
What if he loses the election?
We'll all have to find out what happens then. But
stay tuned.
So I do think this is his element, a dipping of the toe into, hey, I'm going to be here for a while. So you're going to have to listen to what I say. And that is, it. Like there's more of a likelihood that the American president meets with Vladimir Putin in the next 5 years than I think this war is going on 5 years from now.
Let's hope. Yeah.
Yeah.
I am rooting for not war.
Me too. And
well, especially as we have, the money's about to run out. And it doesn't look like, right now Congress can't decide its elbow from its asshole on any level. We've done the hokey pokey. We tried to throw the border in. Now we're taking the border out.
Which is weird because we can always just print more money, right? Like, why do we even have to think about it?
Well, no, that's the thing is that
that's what they're planning to do.
Yeah, no matter what happens, we're going to print more money. But the border was thrown into this deal because it was thought to sweeten it for conservatives. That, okay, if you can get some things on the border, then you'll vote. This has always been about Ukraine money from the very beginning. This was never really about the border. This was about gifts on the border that can sweeten you guys swallowing what needs to get to Ukraine.
And it was so important that Democrats get this Ukraine war money that they gave up a lot of things that they said were hard no's on, not just border, but it's changes to amnesty law is what was really in there. And the fact that Republicans are tanking it, it's just, this Congress is batty.
And that's the thing is, the question is, I don't know if it's for sure that Congress will approve more Ukrainian money.
They haven't even funded the government for last year.
and also it's like...
And there's no movement on those bills either. So even the Ukrainian money, one thing we have to remember is when we are operating under a continuing resolution, which we have been now for 6 months, and there's no sign they're finishing these bills in the next 3 weeks. As we operate on a continuing resolution, they can't start anything new in the Defense Department. That's why the military hates this so much. So even if they wanted to change tactics with the Ukrainian military and train them in a different way or give them different weapons or just change anything, they can't legally do that until the government is properly funded. And so there's a lot of different ways that this funding, not only the supplemental, but also the government not being funded properly, is fucking up this war for the Biden administration.
Well, and also, we're fresh out of adults.
Yeah.
We have no adults anymore.
Nope.
Mitch McConnell put his ass on the line for this immigration thing, and then he had to U-turn on it. He said he was voting for it, he was pushing for it, and then within 12 hours, he realized he didn't have the votes. Speaker Johnson is just being whipped around and look, I have sympathy for him because he's got a half-person majority, so it's like he is in the worst possible situation by the numbers that any speaker could right now, and we still have a special election yet to go for Santos' seat in Long Island. But
we did just have another Democrat resign a couple days ago, so the numbers got one more in favor.
One more, but
it's still fucked.
Literally, they could not impeach Mayorkas, which is a reach to begin with, but they couldn't even do it because a Democrat they thought was at the doctor showed up, and one of their Steve Scalise is still in cancer treatment, so they were down to a one vote majority, and then they lost it when the dude got back early from the doctor, and then they tried to pass a clean bill, which is DOA in the Senate anyway, for Israel funding, and they couldn't pass that. So nope. Ronald Reagan's not walking through that door. Tip O'Neill's not walking through that door. There is nobody that is going to sit people down and say, here's what needs to go. Let's find out what you need to pass it. And we found that out with that immigration bill, because you would think that that's the thing that would sweeten it. And the Democrats did move Didn't move as far as the Republicans wanted them to, but yeah, DOA.
Unless the Democrats agree to pass HR 2, every word of it, they're going to be a hard no on this immigration stuff. They want HR 2.
The Senate is what surprised me. The Senate, because I think it was always going to face an uphill battle in the House, and the House wants HR 2 no matter what. The Senate, yeah. I thought they'd be able to get 60 in the Senate. I thought they'd be able to get John Cornyn. I thought they'd be able to get some of these guys that want to be the Senate Majority Leader in December or in January of after this cycle, and they all tanked it. Langford just got left with his butt in the breeze. Like it was startling to say, I don't know what gets passed.
Nothing.
I have no idea what gets passed.
In this Congress, nothing.
Yeah.
Hard nothing. And so what am I looking for in this interview?
Yes.
Obviously, this is the start of off-ramp conversations. I am curious to see if Putin says that having Ukraine in NATO remains one of his hard no's. I think he will definitely say that Crimea is Russian, and that is what it is. But I'm curious to see his stance on NATO in Ukraine. I think he's going to say that's still one of his red lines.
Yeah, spoiler alert.
Well, I mean, that's a major source of contention.
He does not want to be, he wants a buffer with NATO.
Yeah, which I think is actually fair. I really do. To have NATO go up to his border like that, where NATO is clearly an anti-Russia alliance. You can say it's defensive all you want, but it's defensive because of Russia. I don't think it's an unfair request, but to hear Zelensky talk and to hear Biden talk, like they're saying that Ukraine's ascension into NATO it's red line for them too. So as long as that remains a point of contention, I think this war continues.
Heaton, what do you expect?
In terms of the interview?
Yeah. Super Bowl picks?
Go Big Ten. You know, at the end of the day, as long as Big Ten is going and Bill Hardwick is taking it.
I can't even guess who that would maybe be. Who's he thinking of?
No, it's the same one. The same one it's always been.
Oh, he's thinking John Harbaugh.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's it. Yeah.
Bill Hardwick.
Bill Hardwick. Yes, I have a similar assessment. I would love to hear what the bright lines are, the negotiating goals for Putin, because what I'm worried about at this point is that this is intractable. I think that this was avoidable. I think that if we had in, I don't know, 2021, a year before this happened, I think that had there been some solution not involving NATO accession for Ukraine, this could have been avoided. And I say that because whenever we said we're going to add a new person, or a new country to NATO, Russia would invade that country almost immediately. Like you go back to George W. Bush. George W. Bush goes, Georgia and Ukraine are going to be coming into NATO. It's just a question of when. Like a month later, Russia invades Georgia. It is a very raw nerve for them for a variety of reasons. So I think that was avoidable. Had there been some discussion of, you don't worry, your warm water port in Crimea will be maintained by your Navy, because again, it was once Ukraine started saying, well, maybe we'll kick you out of there. That's when they invaded Crimea, because they were worried about losing access to their base. And Ukraine will be neutral between NATO, or it'll be part of EU battle group, but not NATO or something. I think that was there. What I'm worried about now is Ukrainians, for very, very, very legitimate reasons, do not want to concede any of the territorial loss they've had, particularly after their cities and villages have been bombed and so many people are dead. They want to reclaim every single inch of soil, and I get that. It makes total sense. At the same time, part of the gameplay that occurred during this conflict was that Russia annexed some of the eastern provinces of Ukraine. The reason it did that was twofold. I think that the main reason for it was that under Russian law, which there's still a pretense of obeying in some capacity, Putin can't draft for a foreign conflict. He can only draft for a domestic conflict. But if you took those contested regions of Ukraine and you made them a part of the Russian Federation, legally it is a domestic conflict now, therefore he can issue the draft to bring people in. But once that happened, now according to Russia, legally those are a part of the Russian Federation, just like Rhode Island's a part of America, and Russia cannot lose those without losing face. I'm very worried about that bit, because I think it's going to be a really big step back for Putin to go, yeah, you know what, it wasn't Russia, and the election was a sham, it's Ukraine. That seems to me to be a level of losing face that's very unlikely to happen. And again, very understandably, the Ukrainians aren't going to go, Well, that's fine. We can just let this once go. So I am worried that flashpoint is going to drag on forever and ever. And I would love to see what the actual negotiation points are of Putin to see if there is something that, while no one would probably want it 100%, we can at least get the bombs to quit dropping on Ukrainians.
There's no solution to this conflict that's permanent. Not in that region. Like we are, I think anything that happens will just be the pretext for the next skirmish. Who knows if it'll be as bloody as this one, but we're not talking about a region that's going to go away happy with whatever deal. There is only a question of whether or not you will have a draft on both sides, sending people to die in a meat grinder where they're going to push the line 2 inches to one side and 2 inches to the other. It's fascinating. I mean, we will see, but I don't think Tucker's the problem.
No.
Here's actually the one last thing I wanted to say. Michael Tracy made this point on Twitter that in the border bill that came out, which is also the Ukraine bill, which is also the Israel bill, which is also the Taiwan bill, they don't have any kind of strategy. Still,
They never have.
They never have, and it's like
they being who?
The Biden administration.
the-
Their strategy is to bleed Russia for as long as they can.
and it's like
that's the strategy.
Andrew and I were at our secret British American conference, and by rule, we can talk about what was said. We cannot talk about who said it. Mm-hmm. But I'll just say this. These were people in positions of power for which are in the loop with a lot of stuff. In departments, stately departments that would know where things are. And this is a private gathering of like-minded people that are discussing the Ukraine situation. And it was surprising to me that even in that kind of atmosphere, there was no discussion of an endgame. The policy was they deserve sovereignty, they deserve to be free, they were invaded, we fight, we are not here to tell them when they are done fighting. And that's fine. You can have that opinion, and not to say that anybody in that room was owed anything differently if it were a larger or if it were a private matter that's being discussed. But the fact that even in a private discussion, there was not any kind of, well, realistically, it's probably going to end with the Donbas and the other region that was annexed being something that either at the best case scenario goes to some sort of plebiscite where the local people are able to vote, or there's some autonomous thing. Crimea's gone and Ukraine gets X amount of sovereignty and a guarantee from Russia if they also guarantee that they're not going to join NATO. There was none of that. And it's like that to me is when we're looking at the tens of billions of dollars that are going in there. I don't know.
Well,
it feels like there should be some sort of glide path to some kind of end.
Well, in Congress, what I witnessed, it's the last episode that's up on Congressional Dish. It was fascinating because the State Department went to testify to Congress, and they were essentially saying that the goal is to prolong the war. The goal is to get, these trade routes and to get the grain out and to get commerce up and running while the war continues. Like, keeping the war going because it's costing Russia money and men. That is their goal. I find it absolutely disgusting that they really are sacrificing Ukrainians for this, this global game that they're playing for power. And I don't know, but the strategy is to prolong the war. So it doesn't surprise me to hear that behind closed doors, there is no well, how does this end? Because right now, the United States, the main funder of this, they don't want it to end. And financially, they consider this a good investment. Because at the end of the day, there's going to be multinational corporations that we call American that are going to get in there. Ukraine has fossil fuels. Ukraine has amazing agricultural riches. And these companies want in. That's what this has always been about.
Yeah, but when has American involvement with the vice president's son ever been an issue in Ukraine?
But it's not like a Hunter thing. It is big business wants into this fertile land. Big business wants to control this hub of fossil fuels. And big business right now is making fuckloads of money on these weapons. They say openly in these hearings that, well, yeah, we're spending taxpayer money on this, but it comes back to us because it's spent on American weapons. So it's actually great for our economy. And Rand Paul sat up there and he said, I find that to be a disgusting thing to say. But that is said.
It's a jobs program.
Jen, you need to
Literally.
understand,
Yeah.
Congress doesn't spend our money. It invests it. It never spends our money. It invests, because you guys are fucking stupid. You throw your money in the bushes, right? You just throw your money in the gutter.
That was
Congress is investing
Yeah.
it for you, and it always pays back. Don't worry, they're very shrewd.
the most compelling thing that I heard about sending weapons to Ukraine was that America overbuys weapons and missiles actually go bad. Missiles do have an expiration date, and so it's actually better because either we're wasting our money
We
by
either give them to the
exploding
soup
our own
kitchen or
bad
we throw them
missiles.
out.
Yeah, but basically, like
Either use them or lose them.
Yeah,
It's
either
ridiculous.
we destroy our own property or we send them back to the weapons manufacturers and we have to pay double so they can reload
actually one
our
of the-
missiles and then they can go bad.
That's one of the best arguments I've heard, Justin, in terms of us continuing our side of the funding and the arming in this conflict.
But even then, it's like what Jen mentioned was 3 sales pitches for this Ukrainian money ago. It was 2 sales pitches ago that we got no, it's a jobs plan. Then it became no, it's a border deal, and now God knows where it's going to go. I mean, Schumer's going to tee up a clean foreign aid funding, and maybe it passes the Senate, but it's DOA in the House. It is not going to pass the House. So, hey, we'll see. Hey, you don't know what to do with your money, dear listener. We're like Congress.
Yeah.
You cannot be trusted with your money.
Can't be trusted.
And that's why you need to give it to us. Patreon.com/we're not wrong. By the way, we did get multiple comments on our post last week that was like, yes, you coaxed me over the paywall because you were talking about Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
So it did work. It did work.
Well done, Justin. Or Andrew. We should credit
that
you
was a
with that
Heaton
one.
suggestion.
Patreon.
I have my finger on the pulse of pop culture in America. When people
Swifty Nation.
think of what is the beating heart of what America's interested in. Andrew Heaton. He's what yes. Good. Bill Belichick. Big Ten.
Ooh, you got that one right.
Uh-huh. New England. Patriots.
Oh
Football
my
team.
gosh.
It's like Rain Man. Bill Belichick, football team. New England Patriots. This week, we'll be talking about the highway patrol cops being dispatched by Governor Gavin Newsom to Oakland, Jen and I's former hometown, to stem rising crime and the line of what a governor has a responsibility and possibility to do with an issue like that. That's all in our Patreon exclusive episode. Join us, patreon.com/we're not wrong. Let's swing on over to Arizona. Kari Lake's relationship with the Arizona GOP has been fraught with controversy recently, particularly following the release of a recording involving Arizona Republican Party Chair Jeff DeWitt. In the recording, DeWitt appeared to offer Lake various deals, such as financial compensation to discourage her from running for Senate. This officer was allegedly made to clear the way for a preferred alternative. DeWitt's comments in the recording suggest concern about Lake's ability to fundraise and her electability, linked to doubts about former President Donald Trump's potential to win another election. Following the release of this recording, DeWitt resigned from his position as head of the Arizona Republican Party. Additionally, there are indicators that mistrust within the Arizona GOP towards Lake has increased. Shocker. This sentiment stems as part of Lake's practices of recording conversations and then releasing them publicly, a tactic that she and her allies have seemingly turned against members of their own party like DeWitt. This has led to a decline in trust and willingness to communicate with Lake. Furthermore, there's evidence suggesting that the situation involving DeWitt and Lake may be part of a larger orchestrated plan. Before DeWitt's resignation, another Arizona Republican, Jim O'Connor, was reportedly seeking legal advice about potentially serving as the chair of the Republican Party. This raises questions about the timing and planning of those events, suggesting a deeper political maneuvering within the Arizona Republican Party. Party of McCain, party of Goldwater. Heaton, is this a tipping point even for our modern era of toxic politics?
I don't think so. I don't think that this is some crazy break. I don't like it. But I don't think that like
I love it.
now is the point where I'm like, up until February of 2024, I feel like American politics was pretty genteel and smooth and kind and like I don't think that. I think it's been a dumpster fire for the last 10 years. So
internally, this is crossing a line. Even when you see fractious internal battles, you rarely see one way or another, either this guy out and out looking to bribe their most famous person that nearly won statewide for governor to not run, or let's go the other way, like DeWitt says, this was a selectively edited frame job where she was leading the conversation.
Did you guys listen to the tape?
I did.
No, I did not.
Okay, it's not. I don't know how you could selectively edit this. Like, he was trying to bribe this lady for sure. It's damning.
Can we be clear? Like, was he going to give her a bag full of cash? Because the cynic in me, this is the cynic in me immediately is, we, the party bigwigs, don't want you to run for Senate, but if you step down, we'll figure out something for you to do. Listen, several of us are on the board of Delta. We'll make you on the board of directors of Delta. It'll be a job. You'll be paid for it, but it'll be a sweet plum deal. That's how that works.
We'll play some of the clips here. I'll have to remember to tell Will to go find them.
Is he just giving her cash?
Well, you can find it on Rising. Played them all. It's probably easy to find it through them.
Yeah. What was offered, DeWitt says he was coming to her from powerful people out east. Literal quote from him. Said they don't want to run her out. They just want her to take a pause. And whether or not she'd be interested in taking a job could be a very well, she doesn't have to stop talking. She doesn't have to stop being a public figure. But would she take a pause from politics for 2 years?
This is the bit where I'm confused here. We think this is somehow different than day-to-day politics for the last 250 years?
This one was just recorded and released.
Okay.
That's what makes it different.
That's the bit for me. Like, again, this is the cynical, because this is pretty standard stuff where like when Debbie Wasserman Schultz got ousted a few years ago and people were like, how can they possibly not oust her? And it's like, this is what being ousted looks like. You give her a golden parachute position where she doesn't have any power. That
was for the DNC during the 2016 election.
I'm running for corporate commissioner. Justin, don't worry, you're going to get to wet your beak. You're not going to be corporate commissioner, but we're going to make sure that you get para-dropped into this safe position over here. You'll be taken care. Like, I think that the wheeling and dealing is just part and parcel to the democratic process. I don't like it, but I don't think it's new. And so the bit that confuses me here is how this is significantly different other than she recorded her buddy and released it. That bit does strike me as kind of new because there was sort of an unspoken agreement. If we're having a candid conversation behind the scenes, we're at least going to lay the cards on the table, which, if anything, makes me question her ability to be a senator.
Well, I will say this. She definitely knew that she was the one doing the recording. She was saying shit that made her look awesome. She's like, they're going to have to kill me, like, if they don't want my voice in this contest.
This is what you get getting a journalist running for office.
Television
a television journalist, a talking head.
They're not real journalists.
Yeah. Okay. So, please, both of you, please help me here. A couple of years ago, I interviewed Yuval Levin on the political orphanage, and he had just published a book called Time to Build. His thesis, which I was moved by, was that we've entered a period of rampant institutional decline in the United States, where in terms of Congress as an institution, in terms of hallowed old journalistic entities like the Washington Post, that all of these things, the people entering them are no longer entering these institutions to promote and build and strengthen the institution. They're entering and joining them to hijack them as personal launch pads for their own career. Yeah, so like I'm not running for Congress because I believe in Congress and I want to make Congress better. I'm running for Congress because I know I'm going to get a fuck ton of people on Twitter if I say crazy shit. And then when I leave after 4 or 5 years having done absolutely nothing, I can now get a cool job on Fox or MSNBC. And so Yuval Levin made the argument that we need to quit looking at institutions as platforms for individuals and view them as entities that have worth in and of themselves. And with Congress in particular, part of the problem is you need to have the closed door. Not all the time. You don't want to have a complete smoky backroom deal, but you do need to be able to have candid conversations where somebody can go, look, look, we're all saying that this is the thing. The deal is this. I'm not going to give you that. What are you going to give me? Like there has to be some ability to be honest with each other and then go out and do it.
Because
I disagree
saving
completely.
face is important if you actually want to get things done.
Yeah, so I'm like
The ability to save face.
Yuval Levin would not say it should all be smoky backroom deals, but he would say there should be some space for institutional privacy to get the primordial stuff done before you take it out. Jen, everything should be transparent.
The pendulum has swung so far in that direction that now we have everything being done behind closed doors. I think we have a real problem with people telling the American people one thing and then doing something completely different behind closed doors and making all these deals. I think the public would be well served if there were microphones in every office and every nook and cranny in those buildings. I don't like Carrie Lake. I think she's a full-blown nutcase. But I don't mind the fact that she's recording these conversations. I think we need to know how politics are actually being done. I think we need to know how the candidates are being chosen in these parties. And once they're in Congress, I am sick of the behind closed doors. This was supposed to be done in public. We're supposed to have debates happening on the House floor, and they very rarely do at this point. I have my assistant looking at Rules Committee hearings because that's really where the debates happen because nobody watches. But we all know that most of the stuff is happening in the hallways or in offices and at the bars. Like, so much of it is not happening in public. And so I don't mind that Carrie Lake was like, this is what was said. Literally listen to the tape. I would like a lot more to be taped on Capitol Hill. I think it would be good for us to know. They work for us.
The bit that I'm worried about is that if everybody moving forward does not know but strongly suspects that the conversation is being recorded, I am afraid that all of the conversations are going to be plastic and not direct, and that the government will function even less than it currently does. This is a possibility that I'm concerned about, that there ought to be some situation where I can close the door and go, look, my constituents are going to murder me if I vote for your bill. I actually agree with your bill, but if you can do this for me, I will vote for your bill. But if I have to say it out publicly, I'll just never say it, and then no votes will happen.
But that's even the idea that is okay. Like, I can't vote for this, but I will vote for this other thing. Like, the wheeling and dealing is an issue. I think we need to have debates happening on the floor of the House of Representatives, where these are the merits of this bill. And if you have a problem with it, or if you think your constituents don't like it, that is something to be said in an actual debate. I don't like the idea that they're horse trading like they do in House of Cards. I know that was based on real life, but I don't think the behind closed doors deals are serving us very well. And if you're worried about Congress getting any less functional, I wouldn't, because this Congress has done literally nothing. And we're now a year and a half into it, so it can't get any worse.
And you think we are less transparent now than we've been historically?
Oh my God, yeah. I mean, I'm looking at how these bills are supposed to be crafted. It's supposed to happen in the committee, and then they go to the House floor and then the Senate floor. The committee process has been completely broken. They're pretty much not doing that anymore. You have the Appropriations Committee behind closed doors, not even in the committee, making these government funding bills, which they're not even voting on anymore. You just get these omnibuses, which I know from so much experience, show up at the last minute. They're 3,000 pages. You don't know what the fuck is in them. You have leadership doing all the governing, and then our representatives are supposed to take it or leave it. There's almost no transparency. So what I'm doing in my job is I'm looking for these like random investigations, because the actual job of legislating, I can't watch it. I physically can't watch it because it's not being done in public anymore.
I in no way disagree with you that the Congress is dysfunctional and that it is intentionally become a rubber stamp for the speaker of, we'll put together an oh shit, you have to vote for this or the whole world ends bill, and take either you're responsible for fucking up America or vote on this thing and I'll give you 72 hours to look over it. I don't disagree on any of that. But like the bit that I'm curious about, and you can sway me on this, is I think now we have more information than we've ever had. Like if we were to go back to like 1940, that is the era of smoking cigars in a back room and not telling anybody anything. So like it seems to me that the pendulum swung.
Legislation literally crafted by trading mistresses.
Yeah,
things that have happened in
like,
American history.
It seems to me that we like, and you know, all the congressmen are now spouting off on Twitter all the time. Like, I think it's more transparent now than it was 40 years ago.
I think you guys are talking about two different things.
Okay.
I think what Jen is talking about are the mechanisms of Congress itself, for which is not only an apparent problem, and you can't argue that these issues have deteriorated, but I don't know if anybody remembers, we ditched a speaker for these issues a few months ago, and guess what hasn't in any way changed? any of the stuff that they ditched the speaker for. Literally everything that people were screaming and yelling wasn't happening and needed to happen, and what we really care about are these bills, and we're spending too much, and we need to make sure that we do them all the way that we normally do them. Where are we at on that now? Oh, exactly where we were before? Well, I'm glad that we caused all this chaos to put our feet in the ground.
Just look at this Ukraine, Israel, Taiwan border bullshit that we've been talking about for the last month. We didn't see the text until, I think it was Monday night. And so we've been talking about this thing for months. No one saw the text, and that includes most of the people in the Senate. It was negotiated by 4 people this entire time. This is not how bills are supposed to be crafted.
By the way, to their great detriment.
Yeah.
Because they got outfoxed by the folks who wanted to kill this and had something that sank into the public consciousness, which was 5,000. They got the number 5,000 to sink into the public consciousness, and the 5,000 in the bill, it was 5,000 interactions at the border would automatically trigger the border to shut down. And they were able to get in front of it because the text wasn't out there. They were able to get out there and say 5,000 people let in means that the border gets shut down.
So again, I very much agree with me in terms of the mechanisms of Congress are broken. The bit that I am, and again, this is not 100% Heaton position. This is me thinking out loud here. But the bit that I wonder about is, so there's 4 people that are crafting that bill rather than using Congress as a whole. And I agree that that's a problematic thing. Congress should be a bottom-up entity where we don't know what is going to happen. The speaker is guiding the deliberation, not telling people. I agree with all of that very, very fundamentally. The thing I'm curious about is if those 4 people that had been involved in the bill weren't sure if they were being recorded or not, would anything have happened at all? I don't know if everybody permanently thinking all conversations are potentially illicit and on the record is going to make the process better, because I'm worried that there just won't be any ability to go, let's have an off-the-record conversation, and I'm going to tell you what I'm really worried about, but I'm being a little bit more careful about what I'm saying in public. That's what I'm curious about.
But I think here's what would have been true, is that we would have known months ago, if everyone's being honest, Ukraine funding's dead. And so the only question is, what do we need to staple to this to make a Ukraine vote happen? Because that's the real conversation that's happening. That's been the only conversations that's happened for the last 6 months.
And it's our money. We deserve to hear it.
Is what do we need to do? It is the Biden administration slapping their hand on top of the used car and saying, what do I need to do to get you into this Ukraine bill by the end of the day? And first it was, Taiwan, you're worried about China, huh? Worried about China. And then it was, you want October 7th, Israel, we can give money to Israel too. Not enough? Okay. You have all these people in the House that are screaming and yelling about the border. How about the border? Can we interest you in the border? Let's talk for 4 months about the border. And then that came out. Turns out they can't do it. And that's ultimately what the problem with all of this is that, and I think to Jen's point, if we knew this from the very beginning, that all of this over the last 6 months has just been the Biden administration and the Democrats and those who are for Ukraine funding saying, we need to gussy this up, then at least we would have known that. And it wouldn't have been, about any of this other stuff. It would have been about what they really want it to be about.
I don't know if you're in that back room that your behavior gets any worse if you think that you're being recorded. I think any time that I think I'm being recorded, I'm more careful with my words.
Right.
And so maybe if you think that what you're about to say is monstrous and you don't want other people to know about it, maybe it gets you to rethink having that position. So I'm not really afraid of these people.
Like secret, like theoretically, if when James O'Keefe was trying to bug Democratic congressional offices, that would be a good thing, because if they thought they were having a private conversation behind closed doors with their aides, and that had been recorded and released to the public, there should be no private conversations in Congress.
I mean, I think these people work for the people. So the fact that they think that these negotiations belong to them or belong to their parties, I don't think that's the case. I think that they have considered themselves and their parties to be far more important in the system than they actually are. I liked what WikiLeaks did. I liked that they took things that were supposed to be secret and let us know, and I think it changed the world in a positive way. I think it's good that we all know that we're being constantly recorded through our phones. I actually think most of the time we've been told the secret things, it's been for the better.
Okay. You raise a good point. So like
I think when you keep a lot of secrets, you got more secrets that can come out, and that's that's been a thing even with in terms of the literal classification of secrets in the Pentagon. It's something that has internally been a criticism inside the Pentagon that we're just keeping too many secrets, because when you keep everything a secret, then it's easier for things that are really, really important to get out. Yeah,
you've given me much to think about. The consensus of the trio is radical transparency, even if it involves duplicity in order to obtain it, is going to result in better public policy.
Well,
I mean, I would want every single room to be bugged by policy. I want, like, we have the C-SPAN cameras or the House cameras because C-SPAN's not allowed to control them. But we have the cameras in the House of Representatives and in the committee rooms. I want them in the hallways. I want them in, if you have a congressionally paid for office, I want them in, I want us to be able to see everything.
Big brother rules.
Literally, yeah. I think it would be really good for us.
Again, you all make great points. The bit
Yeah, I'm not on that side, for the record.
The bit that I'm worried about is like, okay, let's say I'm a Democrat and I'm in the Senate, and I fucking despise Chuck Schumer. I fucking hate him. Previously I can close the door and go, God damn it, Schumer, and then I open the door and go, Schumer and I have some disagreements, but overall we're on the same page, whatever like that. I don't know, I'm just there's a part of me that's slightly concerned if there's no privacy whatsoever, that it will gum up stuff, but I don't know.
There's no scenario in which there would be no privacy whatsoever. You're still going to have the whispering in the hallway or in the bathroom. There's always a way to find a way to be private. You leave your phone in the other, there's always going to be a way. But in general, I think it would be really good for the country for C-SPAN to have control of the cameras so we can see who's talking to who. I think it would be good to have cameras in the hallways to see who's talking to who and what the attitudes are. And there's a lot that we can learn from what happens outside that one view that we get into government. And I think most of the governing is happening in our names and outside our view to our detriment. And right now with this Congress, if you're worried about functionality, again, they've accomplished nothing. Nothing. So I can't really imagine it gets much worse than this.
Okay.
I mean, some would say Congress doing a lot would be worse.
Depending on what they're doing, yeah, that's
Yeah.
true. But this one is, these people scare me, man. I'm glad that they haven't been able to do much, honestly.
But then like Ricky Lake is the hero in this situation.
Carrie Lake.
Carrie Lake, but
Carrie
she's
Lake.
the hero in
Yeah.
this situation.
Ricky Lake is a hero in general.
Because
She is.
Carrie Lake is
Shout out to Hairspray.
CarrieAke is exposing hypocrisy and bribery, and so
Yeah.
members of Congress ought to bug each other and record each other in secret because they might be able to reveal.
Just for the entertainment value alone.
I am a dyed-in-the-wool journalist, so I will always take any piece of information as long as it's real, as long as you are not fabricating it. And I think it's the journalist's job to
Authenticate it.
be the authenticator, stuff like that. But I am for all of it. I am not going to stand here and lie to our dear audience and say that I would not play. I love the Project Veritas stuff. They were scummy. I think that it is low moral behavior to find lonely engineers on Tinder and then put a lipstick camera between a girl's boobs and then make him say that YouTube throttles conservatives or whatever the stuff that was happening. It is low moral behavior to do that. But if they really work there, and if it is exposing a thing for which they are saying, I do think it's relevant information. I didn't think it was moral behavior to expose Mitt Romney when he was at a fundraiser and haggard at the end of a day of campaigning. And
Was that
spread
binders
that
full of
around.
women?
No, that was in a debate. No, this is when Romney to a group of donors was like, "Look, half the people in the country are takers. They don't pay taxes,
Yeah.
and they're not gonna vote for me." No, binders full of women. I was at where was I? A Texas Tribune event here. I met the lady that put together, it was her year's job to source, find, and interview women for top positions.
because Romney wanted to get more women.
Because she wanted to get more
but again,
women.
because he used the phrase "binders of women," because we all wanted him to be sexist.
Because that's
he's a
what they were
Republican.
calling it internally. And it's like, oh yeah, but she was doing it, and she was talking about how heartbroken she was as soon as she heard that go viral. That she's like, it's all I did. All I did was try to put together women, women in higher positions.
We should
Yeah,
definitely,
that is sad.
definitely
And then just got
continue
fucking
to absolutely demonize any Republican that tries to get more women involved in power as a shitbag misogynist. This is a very good reward system for Republicans to come to the right place. But that was in the debate. That was something
that was in the debate.
He did that was taken by pundits, but that was not secret.
But it was like Jimmy Carter's nephew or something that was like the bartender at some donor's house in Palm Beach that recorded
it. But back to Carrie Lake, also, she didn't start these conversations. So it wasn't like with Project Veritas, they went looking to get someone into trouble.
They were sting operations.
Yeah, Carrie Lake was recording a conversation that she didn't start. She wasn't the one like, hey, come here and bribe me, and I'm going to record it.
We also don't know. We also don't know that.
Yeah, but
we don't know. We don't know where. Carrie Lake doesn't even say that she released it. Carrie Lake says that somebody else who had it released it. So this is where I have super, like, let's pump the brakes before we assign a full narrative to it.
That's fair. But at the same time, this is a conversation in which someone was trying to bribe her.
I'm shocked that anyone involved in politics would offer something in order to get what they want. I am shocked.
Yeah. And so where she was the one being asked to participate, like she wasn't the one doing the bribing, like I do feel like if someone were to come to me with a suggestion that I find immoral, I don't think it's that immoral for me to press record and be like, hey, asshole, like...
Right, or for that matter, just protecting yourself. I can understand maybe recording something in the event that, like, later it was taken out of context and you're like, well, I actually got this. So just to make sure I've got a reductive thrust of both your positions. Jen, transparency is good. Err on the side of transparency. Transparency is going to make better public policy. It's going to force people to be more honest and work for the people. Something like that. Justin, I find your position fascinating, and you're always interesting to contrast with Jen and I in that I think Jen and I are much more ideological driven than you are.
Yes.
I think you are deeply cynical and practical. So, like,
I'd reverse those, but sure.
Jen and I are generally fighting about, like, what is the platonic ideal that we should be shooting for? And like this, Bernie Sanders versus Mitch Daniels or whatever. Whereas I feel like your position's generally like, look, just get the most competent crook. Like they're all doing graft. They're all criminals. Get a competent criminal. So in this instance, your position is sort of like, look, they're all scumbags. But if the scummery can benefit the truth, then bring on the scum.
You're even thinking about it in your own weird, like we're trying to get to a good position. I have no arrogance to believe that any solution that I say would bring about a better world. All I know is that what I was raised to do, what I was trained to do, is to try to bring information to the light. And so if Carrie Lake's friend or her telling her friend is leaking this, by the way, impeccably recorded. There was no shuffling. There was no like rubbing in a pocket.
Her left arm is dead silent the whole time. She never moves it.
I'll just say somebody who spent a career with lav mics can record shit like that. Like that was bugged exceptionally well. If she's leaking that, it deserves to be out there. It does mean that there is a trust broken down between these two people. It means that this is the kind of thing that does happen, and it happens in the Arizona GOP. Again, a party that not long ago and has a historical heritage of speaking truth to power. Barry Goldwater put that party on the map by not obeying what his party wanted him to do. John McCain was the maverick from Arizona that took that brand national. This is supposed to be, and it has fallen a far way. They are an absolute tire fire. But if we are going to look at the fact that they're bugging each other and they're trying to bribe each other to not run, then yeah, that is worthwhile. I don't know that
I'll add I think you all have converted me, although I'm going to take a a consenting opinion rather than the majority opinion. If this can get politicians to eat each other, I do see some benefits to that. And it sounds like I'm not going to root for politicians to bandy together that much. So okay, you've convinced me. Yeah. Good. Yay!
I don't know that I would go full Big Brother where we totally mic and record every room of
we record them on the toilet, but we blur the genitals.
Yeah. But I do think that we are all in agreement that C-SPAN should have more access. That it was a better world when we could see Matt Gaetz and AOC talking. It was a better world when we could see where alliances were and how people were talking to each other. It was a humanizing element that I do think the problem we
Or
have.
see that the room is empty during these
Or
debates.
see that it's empty. Or see who leaves. Or see right now we have to rely on Twitter to know like why that bill failed.
I agree with you guys. Like,
of the doctor not showing up. We had to rely on gossip that was being tweeted on a message board.
I saw all the time when I worked in the House is there's, Representative Dip Gently from Gleep, Nevada, and he gets up there like the speaker is the non-voting delegate from Guam because the real speaker can't fucking bother to be there. So the non-voting delegate from Guam is the dude with a gavel, and then the honorable representative from Gleep, Nevada comes up and goes, "Mr. Speaker, I cannot believe that this body would vote against the resolution that cactuses are really fruit," or whatever the dumb shit thing is. And he's got his whole staff sitting directly behind him so that on camera it looks like there's a full house. And they're all just playing on their BlackBerry. And then there's maybe like one sleeping guy behind him who's about to give his own bullshit speech. And then like from my perspective as a staffer, I could look at the chamber and go, there are 8 people in here and I'm one of them.
Yeah.
But the camera's being focused in such a way so that the representative from Gleep, Nevada can then send the clip.
So he doesn't look like a dipshit.
To the Nevada Tribune, and then they'll go, "Wow, Dip's really giving him hell. Congress is a bunch of crooks, but not our guy, Dip. Dip Gently's the last true representative of the people. Wow, he's really fiery, isn't he? What a lion. Fucking Gleep."
We're not wrong pod at gmail.com. We have an early email spring. We're not wrong pod at gmail.com. RFK Jr. fan writes, what Andrew said about high walls and wide gates is the exact policy that RFK Jr. is pushing, and one of many reasons why I will be voting for him come November. You should look into his policies more. I think you'd like them.
I would love to interview RFK Jr. This is one of my hopes for this year. There's a group here in Austin that I've done stand-up for that might be doing an event with RFK Jr. and we're in tentative talks right now about seeing if I can be involved in that and moderate something or something. I don't know. Hopefully it'll happen. I would love to talk to him.
That'd be awesome.
Baltimore Stinks writes, like Andrew Heaton, I also like most places I've been, except for the 6 months the military made me live on a boat in Baltimore. Baltimore is worse than anything I've seen in other countries.
That's not very specific.
I'm gonna speak up for Baltimore.
Oh.
The finest art museum in the United States is in Baltimore. It's called the American Museum of Visionary Artists. It is wonderful. If you are in Baltimore, you should absolutely check it out. I'm going to say if you're in D.C. for more than 3 days, you should go check it out.
How far is Baltimore from D.C.?
About an hour.
Hour and change, depending on traffic.
The American Museum of Visionary Artists is organized like no other art museum I've ever been to. Like usually art museums are like, this is the Cubist section. And then there's all these weird explanations of like, this guy railed against neo-romantics. And like, it all makes it sound like they're fighting each other. The American Museum of Visionary Artists will have like, literally, this floor is just people in prison. I did an article back when I went there. There was a guy named Vincent Nardone he'd been in prison since like 1960. And it was fascinating looking at his artwork because he'd not been in the outside since girls were wearing poodle skirts. So all of his art is locked in the 1960s. And he ended up, like, we corresponded briefly, and he was explaining, like, yep, that girl in a poodle skirt is a specific lady, but you're seeing, like, this time capsule art. And then, like, another floor, they're like, this floor, just artists with obsessive compulsive disorder. We're not going to organize this based on, like, cubists and romantics and Monet and shit. We're going to take felons, obsessive compulsive disorder. That is a fucking awesome way to design an art museum. In Baltimore, I tip my hat to you on it.
I'll also speak up for Baltimore because their airport has one of the best food courts in the country. I'm a big fan.
The bathroom.
They have the best bathroom.
We had a layover in Baltimore heading to New Hampshire.
They did. I came out and I was like, that's the nicest bathroom I've ever been in. And then there's a big sign on the wall that says that they were voted
Nicest
#1
bathroom.
best bathrooms. It was gorgeous, but their food court had a Chipotle, an Arby's, a Pinkberry, plenty of
This
stuff.
is what makes a good
Jamba
food
Juice.
court for you?
Well,
Chipotle?
Yeah. I mean, it's
Pinkberry?
yes, 100% Chipotle. I picked my
Do they have
layover.
Sbarro's? Because I would like Sbarro's. I want it to be a mall food court, basically.
They had, well, yeah. I mean, here's the thing about
like Arby's.
airports.
Yeah.
It's all going to be chain food or random food you've never heard of. So if I can get a Chipotle, which at least is relatively healthy food, I'm down for it. So I try and get my layovers to be in Baltimore or Orlando because those two have Chipotles. But
in the Southwest terminal.
Orlando's in the Southwest Terminal too.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Pinkberry was very surprising. I've never seen an Arby's in an airport. Yeah, so it's a fave.
By and large, I enjoyed my time in the Baltimore airport, although it did make me miss my dinner with C-SPAN.
Yeah.
The cool kids dinner that I was invited to and Jen wasn't, for the record.
Yeah. Dick moved to bring that up
So-
while wearing my vest.
Yeah, your vest. No more Congress folk.
Wait, who has been on C-SPAN more than once?
I've only been on one time, to my knowledge.
I mean, must be a pretty shitty job you did if you didn't get the jacket.
How dare you?
It only took me one time on C-SPAN.
What is this guy's name again? Norman Lamb. What was it?
Howard Mortman.
Mortman.
Howard Mortman?
Who does the best political podcast in the nation, The
All
Weekly.
right, I'm going to seduce this man just to fucking piss you both off. That's
If you
the plan.
show up in that vest, I swear to God, I'm going to hang myself.
No more Congress folk writes, I was horrified to hear your suggestion to increase the number of congressional representatives. I will have a hard enough time being an executive producer for a congressional dish without y'all raising the amount I'd have to pay.
That would be a problem.
Explain that
People
for folks who are
pay
not
you
aware.
based on how many Congress people there are?
Sort of, yeah. So with Congressional Dish, it's 100% listener supported, as you know. And if you if you pay a certain amount of money, you get to be an executive producer on an episode of your choice, which not only gives your vouch to that episode, but we also have a most valuable episodes list. Because for years and years and years, I've had people be like, which episodes do you recommend to new people? And I'm like, I don't fucking know. Like, I don't even remember what I recorded. So I wanted the listeners, the producers really, to be the ones to choose that. So every time there's an executive producer put onto an episode, it moves up the list. And we've been doing this for so long now that if you go to most value episodes, I think it's pretty accurate. Like the favorites are on top. And so the way that we've done it is to become an executive producer. It's $1 for every member of Congress. So it's $535 to be an EP. And so if we raise the number of people in Congress, then we would raise the money, which would work for me, but...
My top priority is, of course, for people to become executive producers on the Congressional Dish. But outside of that primordial drive, listener, look, either you have very powerful members that have ridiculously large constituencies, or you have less powerful members with more representative constituencies, and I'd rather have the latter.
But if we only have 4 people creating all the bills... I mean, we need to get our actual representatives more involved. Otherwise, it doesn't really matter.
Don't think it's an either or. I'd love to have both reforms.
That's fair.
I would love to have Congress be an emergent legislative process. I'd love for there to be a lot of campaign finance reform in the institution of Congress, where you don't advance your career in a committee by accruing money and giving it to the party. And then on top of that, I would love for constituencies to be smaller, because I think 750,000 people is just too large to adequately represent.
You can't knock on those doors.
No.
Oklahoma City Tower fan fiction writes, back of the napkin math has me that seeing a skyscraper from Oklahoma in Austin would require it to be 9 miles high if Heaton wants to see it from its house.
Challenge accepted. Oklahoma will rise to the occasion. We will build a fucking 9 miles tall. We will touch the face of God.
If our Heaton drinking, or Justin's obsession writes, if our Heaton drinking game is him mentioning ranked choice voting or complaining about the weather, is Justin's drinking game the death of journalism? No, friends, it is not the death of journalism. It is all things journalism. It is the life of journalism, the middle of journalism, the death of journalism. I have said this forever on many different shows, but the greatest desire for every reporter is to eventually get out all this other stuff, news, politics, sports. Let's get to the real story. Us, the people out here gathering the news for you. It is an ego-depleted field, and all you want to do is talk about yourself.
You're the king of that.
Big time. Or am I a GOP operative, as Justin is a GOP operative writes? When you ask Jen to, quote, say what they actually said, unquote, in reference to Republican statements on the immigration deal in Congress, it's hypocritical. Your whole job is to read between the lines, to analyze what's really happening, despite what politicians say in public. Are you just needling Jen with conservative talking points? Or do you actually believe that Republicans are negotiating in good faith to pass a deal that would be a boon to the sitting president of the opposing party in an election year? Well, while I think the podcast was a bit of a Rorschach test for you, listener, because you certainly saw exactly what you wanted, I will say that refer to our first segment. I believe that Republican congressmen deserve at least the respect that we would give to Vladimir Putin. And you should at least repeat what they said, even if you don't believe it. Do I think that they are negotiating in good faith? I think that you are not negotiating in good faith by thinking that this immigration deal was actually the real reason why we were arguing. We were arguing about sweeteners to a Ukraine deal. So am I surprised that it fell apart? A little bit, because I do think that the Republicans could have taken a pound of flesh and gotten something out of it. I don't think that electorally they would have given much back, because I don't think that all of a sudden people would say, Joe Biden, great on the border.
Yeah.
But it does not surprise me that it fell apart, because everything falls apart in this Congress. So there we go.
But yes, he's needling Jen.
Well, I
He's
also needle
always
both of
needling
them.
Jen.
I needle. Look, here's all right. This is on one hand, here's the mean side of it. Yes, I needle both of these people because it makes for a better show. But in reality, the only thing that I ever want, and this is me being totally honest, is I want everybody's viewpoint to be represented. And oftentimes when I needle or I say something that is pointed, or dare I say partisan, it is because hoping that I have a good sense of the 360 of the argument, I feel that there is a progressive listener that is going to be yelling at their phone, and I want to say that to Heaton. I feel that there is a conservative listener that is listening and screaming at their phone and wants to yell this to Jen, and I try to do that to at least try to represent a 360 of the conversation, because there's not many places that do that. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I do. Last episode, it was me putting words in Jen's mouth and saying that she was calling all Republicans racist.
Justin, I want to give you props, like legitimately, as a moderator, you do a wonderful job. But also a bit tongue in cheek, listeners, I want you to appreciate the fact that Jen and I probably agree with each other 90% of the time. We have some profound differences in terms of political economy. Outside of political economy, I could probably be Jen's press secretary or vice versa, and Justin will still figure out how to make us fucking knife fight each other. And that is impressive. That's impressive for Jen and I to go in broadly agreeing and Justin to figure out how to get each other at each other's throats by the end of the conversation.
He's a natural needling little prick.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
And we love you.
Yeah. Whipping Shitties writes, discussing a Milwaukee to Chicago trip, when learning that you had 3 weeks to kill, you said, can I do donuts? Let it be known that in this part of the country, the term whipping shitties is preferred to doing donuts. It's a traditionally Minnesota term that's gained popularity in the surrounding states.
Is this referring to like in the car?
Yeah. Huh. I've never heard of whipping shitties.
No, me
and
neither.
I love it.
You've just started a thing out here in Austin.
I
dear
know.
listener.
I'm gonna be whipping some shitties in my fucking Tony suburban neighborhood.
Yeah.
Let's get into the conservative liberal divide from last week. Why are Gen Z men more conservative? They don't have a choice, right? The white cis het man has long been the source of all society's ills, according to progressives. Oppression always comes from these men, even when it doesn't, i.e. internalized patriarchy, misogyny, racism. To progressives, white cis het men will always be racist, misogynistic, and hateful. There is no salvation for them. So men can either buy into an ideology in which they are eternally damned, or one where they can be strong, virtuous, and successful, by all metrics, a good person. Doesn't seem like much of a choice.
This sounds like something that was written by someone who only knows about progressives from the perceptions of people who hate progressives because they're just on a different team. Because this is, I mean, I have a lot of progressive friends. I've been in progressive media from time to time, and this is just so not representative of what progressives feel. I think there is a white man victimhood that is used and gets people to hate progressives for things that they never actually say. And I think it's a real shame, because if you knew anything about real progressives, you would know that a lot of their policies are designed to help white, especially uneducated men. I mean, it's progressives that are pushing for policies that allow people who do not have a college education to make living wages and to have health care, you know, not just insurance, but actual health care. So if you get sick, you don't go bankrupt. They're the people that believe that your labor has value and that the fruits of labors of companies should be shared with the workers and not just all go to the shareholder class. I mean, in so many ways, it's progressive policies that would help people that are white, cis, het, whatever that means, men. They're not the enemy in any way. You're not calling white men the enemy to point out that slavery did happen. So it's, recognizing that there have been problems doesn't mean that you're the enemy. And I just feel like by not giving progressives an actual hearing, by not checking out what they actually say, you're probably voting against your own best interests here, because this is actually a really hateful thing to say against progressives. It's
So you're saying it's
blatantly
an expression
untrue.
of his internalized patriarchy, misogyny, and racism?
No, I think he's been tricked by liars. Honestly, I find this very sad because there are a lot of liars on both sides. There's definitely progressives that do this too, that make conservatives out to be, monsters. And I think this is just another symptom. I think what I'm seeing here is someone who has decided they are on probably team conservative. Progressives are the problem. Progressives hate you, and therefore you have to be a conservative. You are a victim of progressivehood.
Specifically on the gender line.
Yeah, but I mean...
That's what he was emailing in about.
Yeah, and it's fundamentally untrue to say that progressives hate white men. It is not true, but I can understand why they would say that, because I have heard plenty of people who are not progressive, who don't know progressives, saying shit like this. I think it's part of the problem. It's this tribalism that we talk about all the time.
So you say that those kinds of things don't exist within the progressive movement?
I think that the way this person sees it, no, I don't think it exists. I think that progressives are calling out racism and misogyny, but that doesn't necessarily mean that white men are, the source of all societal ills. That is certainly not a progressive position. And if it was, they wouldn't be fighting for white men to have their labor be valued. And, they would be trying to punish white men, and that there's just nothing in their policies that does that. So this is someone who doesn't know progressives. This is someone who only knows about progressives because of what they've heard from people who hate them.
I've never been more excited to have a no emails about emails rule.
Yeah,
never been more excited. Let's get to the other side of this. We got 2 emails about it. Why are Gen Z men more conservative? They don't have a choice. Part 2. As a progressive millennial male, I can attest that even though my feeds are full of gentlemanly scholars exposing how Milton Friedman and Ronald Reagan are responsible for everything bad in this country, the recommendations nearly always put red pill, incel, pickup artist, Gamergate, and similar content just a click away, as well as ads for Jordan Peterson, Andrew Tate, Joe Rogan, Ben Shapiro, Charlie Kirk, Prager, Epic Times are common. Damn, Dennis Prager, that's it. Dennis Prager and the Epic Times are common. I assume you know who and what those are.
Most of them I do not.
I do. Which ones do you not know?
I do not know. Incel, PUA, Gamergate, Prager, or Epic Times.
Heaton?
So incels is a portmanteau of involuntary celibate.
Yeah.
It refers to men that are unable to couple up or get laid, and are, when used in this sense, refers to guys that have manifested that into a angry misogyny. I think incels are a weird phenomenon for society in general, because obviously the misogyny is bad, but we also, as a society, throw incels under the bus, meaning guys who are such losers they can't get laid. We're like, fuck them, evil pieces of shit. And I'm like, maybe it's bad to be misogynist, but we should also have some sympathy for guys that can't get girls.
Yeah.
Well, they're also very mean online. That's another thing, yeah.
Yes. Worthwhile critiques of all of the evil, inflammatory bile.
They are the only people that are mean online. The only people.
But how are they recommended on the internet? That's what I don't get.
Pickup artists are like, did you ever see the book The Game that came out by Neil Strauss around 2007? No. It was very popular in its
I would
day.
actually highly recommend it. It wound up getting a reputation because it's about a community of pickup artists. So if you've ever heard the term negging,
that comes from that.
that was from
do I
there.
know?
Jen, if you ever, before you were married, did a guy ever come up to you in a bar and intentionally say negative things to you to try and chip away at your self-esteem so that you would comparatively find him interesting and be into him?
I mean, it's happened since I've been married. Yeah, sure.
So that's negging. But the book, The Game, written by Neil Strauss, who the whole setup of it was that he wrote one of the best rock biographies ever, The Dirt, about Motley Crue. And he's like, I toured with Motley Crue where I watched debauchery that the Roman emperor had not seen, and I couldn't get laid in the 2 years that I was touring with Motley Crue. So he has this self-confidence crisis and descends into this world of pickup artists, which, along with things like negging, which wound up getting a lot of the attention, are also other tips like wear a gigantic furry hat and learn close-up magic. Basically ways that very, very shy guys can talk to women, can feel comfortable talking to women that they feel that they would be otherwise bothering or inconveniencing or be shooed away by. Spoiler alert for the game. It's not a happy story. It doesn't end with everybody being extraordinarily so buried in pussy that they find nirvana. It's a bunch of lonely dudes who remain lonely and then wind up fighting with each other.
I read that book when it came out years ago, and my interpretation of the game by Neil Strauss is very close to my interpretation of Nietzsche, which is brilliant observations, horrible conclusions. Because a lot of the observations he has of like, if you do this, women respond positively, are apparently correct based on what they did. But also, do you want to be that dickwagon? Like, I read that book and like set it down and went, I would rather not get laid than become one of these people. But it was really big back in the day. And by the way, I hung out with him in a green room one time.
Neil Strauss?
Yeah, I was doing a show, and like he was.
Was he wearing a big furry hat?
No.
Did he say that you had big teeth?
He definitely negged. He definitely negged. And he also was he made me uncomfortable. And not because he was being sexual with me. It was just like he was really into power moves in a way that I didn't enjoy. So like we're talking, and he wasn't aggressive and he wasn't mean. But like at one point, we're just having a conversation, and he's like, well, it's like your relationship with your mother. Like, sum up your mom in one word. And I went, no. And he went, no, just sum up your mom in one word. And I was like, if I do that, I am going to feel bad about my mother because my mother is bigger in my mind than one word. I'm not going to reduce my mom to one word. But like what he's doing is trying to make you get off your to knock you off your power center by like if anybody sums up their mom in one word, you're going to feel like an asshole, aren't you? Isn't your mom bigger than one word?
I mean, it depends on the word.
Yeah, it made me feel slightly uncomfortable. So anyway, he was the game guy. Gamergate, that's a bit before my time, although it's definitely my realm.
Gamergate is another realm of incel kind of stuff.
Yeah, that was like
it was a big culture war fight that broke out about video games and
I'm thinking there was a sci-fi thing that came out before I got into media, which was kind of similar. I think.
No, yeah, Gamergate was its own thing. Yeah, Jordan Peterson, obviously. So what, you didn't know Prager?
No.
There's a Dennis Prager is a commentator, and he also creates videos in a YouTube channel called Prager U, like Prager University. It's not a real university, but they have created conservative-leaning educational videos that have propagated through YouTube. And then the Epic Times I have always seen predominantly as an anti-Chinese outlet.
Isn't it owned by a cult? Am I thinking of the right one?
They might be Falun Gong. I don't know.
Or that might be Washington Times. I can't remember. There's some publication in D.C. that is owned by a religious group.
But yeah, that's why men are more conservative, or Gen Z men are more conservative because of YouTube.
Well, I mean, some of these are the liars who make you think that white men are the targets of progressives and, the source of all societal ills. I mean, some of these people are the ones who I have seen say things where I'm like, progressives don't actually think that. They lie about progressives for a living and they make a good living off of it. So, just the fact
you can
that
make a good living picking out the most cartoonish version of a movement.
Absolutely.
There is no true progressive. There is a progressive movement.
No, absolutely.
But a progressive movement includes multitudes, and I would say some of them, by way of intersectionality, have a lot of negative things to say about certain racial classes or certain economic classes.
Well, and this is why I feel like these terms, progressive and conservative, are largely not helpful, and I try not to use them as much as possible, but I fucking had to because I'm on this show. But I do feel like when I see something like this first email, this caricature of progressives, I do think we kind of know where that comes from. It's a misrepresentation of a lot of the progressives that I know that label themselves progressives. They do not feel this way towards white men. but there are people telling you that they do, and it is the
I think
Ben Shapiro's of the world that are doing it.
And I think that there's a lot of conservatives that would say, whenever you say, "Oh, well, it's a typical conservative thing,"
Which
then
I said
they would
too,
say, "Yeah,"
which is exactly what I said.
Yeah.
I think that there's a lot of people telling you what the other side is in a bad faith way, and I think that people are believing it, and that's why I find that email so sad, is that they're buying it.
Whatever. People are going to find reasons to be pissed.
It's just sad. It doesn't help us solve any problems to behave like this. So,
you know what? It's a shame, Justin, that we cannot have any follow-up emails, because what I would be very curious about is this person talking about lived experience, or talking
I'm just going to forward them all to you.
or talking about media
don't want them.
consumed? Because I think that both of you have a point on this. To Jen's point, there is absolutely a cottage industry, or I shouldn't even say cottage. There's an industrial military complex within the conservative media movement of intentionally finding shrill, irritating progressives and then making them emblematic of the progressive movement. That is a very common thing that happens.
and vice versa.
And vice versa, right? Because we live in a very tribalistic time, and red team and blue team.
We spent 30 minutes talking about how Taylor Swift is a psyop. I'm going to take a wild guess and say that's not a broadly held thought amongst the entire conservative movement.
No, agreed. Because the point is, my team's good, the other team is evil. So what I'm going to do is find examples of the shitbag, and any movement that has 300 million people in it, or 150 million people in it, is going to have shitbags in it. The question is, do you look at the median, the top, or the bottom as emblematic of it? I try on my end, when I say Democrat or Republican, I very intentionally try to picture my smartest Democrat and Republican friends, because I would rather have the touchstone for me be the top of the gang rather than the bottom. The media typically goes, we're going to go with the absolute bottom of the septic tank to be emblematic of the different groups. So I think that that's true. And there are a lot of people that are getting their information as a caricature and a cartoon of the other team. That being said, when I lived in New York, there were times where I felt like, within my lived experience, that I had all of my default switches in the wrong place, and that there was something that was slightly bad about me. It wasn't a constant, ever-present thing, but there was a certain level of friction that I felt. And I would never tell anybody that you're not allowed to have an opinion because of your skin color or your gender. I would never say that. And I have been told that. So I have had a little bit of lived experience too, where I'm like, yeah, I don't think it's non-existent. I think that you can over-caricaturize it. You can use it over the top as emblematic of an entire group of people rather than a subset. I think that that's true, but I don't know. I've experienced a touch of it.
I mean, I'm not saying that it's not there, but where I think it becomes harmful is that it goes from this conversation about sexism and misogyny and racism, and this person will probably dismiss progressives even though they might have policies that they agree with. So by dismissing the entire group and being like, they hate me because of information you're getting from, bad faith actors, you're dismissing an entire movement that actually could help you in very real, especially economic ways. If you're a white male, you're probably, especially if you're young, someone who would get drafted into a war. So you might be interested in having anti-war candidates represent you. So the fact that these conversations turn into the way people vote, that's what really makes me sad about it, because I do think there's people that are considering themselves conservative because of bullshit, really. These culture war crap, like they're voting based on culture war. And a lot of times I think they're hurting themselves economically, and we're getting into wars. And it's the conversation that we have about this kind of stuff, and the fact that that's what people vote on. And yet I'm watching Congress doing very serious things. That's what bothers me about this. You're voting based on
I very much
lies.
agree with you, and you're being reductive and tribalistic. And it gets complex. I mean, like with the draft, who ended the draft? Richard Nixon.
Yeah.
Who convinced Richard Nixon to end the draft? Milton Friedman. Milton Friedman was a very strong proponent of, he got into a fight on national television with a general where he said, look, the draft is slave soldiers. You are putting people into slavery. He was a very full-throated spokesman. So to the other guy, who listens to the gentleman scholars exposing how Milton Friedman and Ronald Reagan are responsible for everything bad about the country, if you think the draft is bad, then Milton Friedman's your friend. And I think part of the takeaway from this is that it would benefit the country as a whole to look at issues as issues rather than as sacred totems of either the good team or the bad team.
Yeah.
When we boil it down to I am on a team, therefore my stuff is good, and the other team is ultimately evil shitbags and whatever they want to get rid of, I think that's stupid. Like, sight unseen right now, Andrew Heaton if AOC and Cato agree on something I'm for it. Like if AOC and Cato go, that thing is not a good subsidy, it is absolutely cronyistic bullshit. There are things that might agree. I don't know. Like I am critical of Bernie Sanders on a lot of his political stuff. Very possible that we would be like best friends on criminal justice reform. There are people that I disagree with on, I don't know, military issues that I would probably agree with on immigration or something. I don't know. But I think the other bit to remember too is that the blue team and red team are not permanent cosmic religions that manifest over time. That is one of the dumbest things that has been mainstream boiled into the American consciousness, that there is something eternal and cosmic about the conservatives and the progressives. And when you actually start to look at it, they're grab bags, they are vehicles to get policies through, and they frequently switch positions.
They're coalitions.
Yeah, they're coalitions. And so part of it is like being able to look at those issues and going, okay, maybe I agree with you on this issue, but I don't agree with you on that issue, as opposed to I am fighting a battle against the evil team forever.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest change in our modern world politically is the rise of the MAGA right, and there are elements that stripped out progressive voters into that
Yeah, there was
coalition.
about 10% of Bernie Sanders voters switched over to Donald Trump in 2016.
That is something that happens, and it happens all the time.
Yeah.
Moving on to the border conversation. Manny from the block writes, I'm in New York City, and from what I'm seeing, this influx of illegal immigrants is killing this city. There's a rigorous number of prostitutes, a ridiculous number, sorry, not a rigorous number, although I don't know how hard they're
A
working.
rigorous number of prostitutes would be when you're talking about your personal experience
Exactly.
going through prostitutes. I encountered a rigorous number of prostitutes over the
These
weekend.
prostitutes were in a rigorous number. 3, 2, 1.
I don't even have to jog anymore because my life is so replete with hookers.
A ridiculous number of prostitutes during all hours of the day, standing on most corners of Roosevelt Avenue in Queens, ranging from Venezuelans to Asians. And there's also an increase in crime. Most of them are on electric bikes, and it's just like how the gangs operate in South America. I'm first generation here for parents from South America, and it's basically the exact same crimes that happen over there. People on bikes, slashing purses and robbing people. The border should be closed. In every other country in the world, it is difficult to get in, and the streets have never been this unsafe. You got immigrants beating up cops, and they get released the next day.
As I've mentioned on the program before, I'm generally pro-immigrant, and what I would want to know is why would there be a difference now between previous periods of immigration in American history? So New York City is a very good example of this. If you go back to like 1820, I think 50% of the people in New York were first generation or immigrants. You go back to like 1800 in America anyway, I think it's like a quarter of the population was either an immigrant or had a parent as an immigrant. So right now is not the high watermark of immigration in the United States, and that original period of immigration in the United States corresponded with the highest increase in living comfort, wages and things like that in the American experience as well. So it wasn't counterposed to the average person coming up in the world, quite the opposite. I would be curious as to why that would be different now. What the difference would be. Is it that there are certain countries that have problematic crime issues that we should restrict more? Is it that there's I don't know. I would not shut the border down. I would try and figure out what the problem is and address that rather than just say we're not inviting in any immigrants.
Think about it. Like we're letting in a lot of people that are claiming asylum and making it hard for them to work. And New York City is notoriously one of the least affordable places to live. We have an affordability crisis in this country in general. And so if you're brand new to the country, you can't get a job. I think the affordability crisis has to be a part of this, because how do you afford an apartment in New York when you come here with nothing, especially if you're not really allowed to work and like your legal status is always in flux. And so they end up doing street things to make money, and they end up robbing people because they're desperate. I think desperation breeds crime. And I think that has to be a factor. And I don't think it's just immigrants that are doing it.
I mean, this specific issue might flip that Santos special from Democrat to Republican. Right now, all of the polling with Tom Suozzi, who used to be the representative there, he's running again. But the polling is really, really close with this woman who has never been in politics before, largely because she's based her entire campaign on what unchecked immigration has done to Queens and Long Island, which is where that district is. So, you know, we can high-mindedly think about these problems and we can wonder what the root causes are, but on the ground there, they are pissed. Like this is a a local issue for which New Yorkers have taken a far different look. We are miles away from sanctuary city at this point in terms of public opinion in some of these cities, and New York is
and like, you know, something that I think people have a point on, and we've talked about this in the context of the southern border with Texas, is I can be very pro-immigrant, but at the same time understand if there is a wildly disproportionate concentration of immigrants in border communities that is straining the resources there and straining the infrastructure, they have a point that that's going to be problematic. Some of the solutions, in part, to immigration in the United States have been trying to figure out how to get immigrants to go to underpopulated parts of the country, like Detroit, which have been bottoming out, or like I don't think Philadelphia's had like a lower population. It's been declining since like 1950 or something, or at least is not as big as it used to be in 1950. So figuring out a way to go, hey, actually, there's like literally in Detroit right now, there are entire neighborhoods where the city has said we're just not going to provide public services in this entire neighborhood because we don't have the resources to do it. And saying like, okay, if you're coming over and you're going to get a job over here, if you live in this particular area, we will take a year off the necessary time you have to get your green card, or alternately, we will help you find employment or something. I don't know. I think that there are solutions that would help alleviate some of the release valve problems you see in ports of entry by just not making it so concentrated.
Yeah. Bless this mess writes, the poor will always be with us. To paraphrase the Gospel of Mark, the immigrant is one type of poverty we see more and more. There can always be disagreement on these social issues, but lifting up the poor through charity and other good works does not only benefit the poor, it benefits the charitable. Sanctifying the immigrant, if it is done selflessly, can bring about interchange and extend to those for which we have disagreements. Disagreements, for instance, on how to best help immigrants.
I agree completely.
An immigration pitch from a Tennessee white guy with a construction company writes, number 1, entry criteria, clean criminal record as much as it can be determined, able to work. This gets you a work visa for 15 years. Then you pay taxes for that duration. For the duration of your 15 years, you are not eligible for any welfare, no Medicare, no Medicaid, no food stamps, nothing. You come here to work and improve your life, and shit gets hard. Figure it out on your own. 3, if you successfully complete your 15 years, pay your taxes every year, no arrests, and generally keep your nose clean. Any infraction, no matter how minor, is immediate deportation. So sorry, we gave you a shot, you blew it. You can then sit for a citizenship exam. That's it.
It's not practical. To say that, like, you wouldn't be eligible for any welfare for 15 years, like, if you lose your job and then you don't have any health care, this is what leads people to steal. If you can't get food stamps, you steal the apple, you steal the bread, you don't just fucking die. It's not practical.
A white guy from Tennessee. He also said, I cut this from the email, that he runs a construction company. He says, if I have a choice to hire an immigrant, legal or illegal, I will do it 100 times out of 100 over the white guy because they usually work harder.
And that to me is like, I am not as offended by this as Jen is. Like, I understand why. I understand the abstract fear that people would come over and try and suck up public resources and that would burden the system. That being said, the data we have does not indicate that that is the case. The data that we have is that people that immigrate to the United States have both a lower rate of using welfare and a lower rate of criminality than native-born Americans. Most of the people that come over do generally want to work and improve their lives. They're not looking to sponge. So while I wouldn't mind having some kind of safeguard there, I'm not worried about it terribly. One of the other things you could do is like, I think we should be coming up with more ways for people to legally immigrate to the United States. So one of the things that would obviate some of these concerns is this wouldn't be exclusively the way to become an immigrant, but for people that could pay up front for presumed public uses, they just pay a dead fee and then they come in. Because there's tons of people, by the way, that have graduate degrees that live in other countries that would love to come work over here and have the money to do that.
Oh, yeah. I think the issue that we are looking at now, like the Americans for Progress is an organization that is for more legal immigration. They might sponsor us on a trip.
Oh, you're talking about Americans for Prosperity.
Prosperity, sorry. For Prosperity. They might sponsor us on a trip to the border because they are currently pausing their conversation and their advocacy for legal immigration because they know it is a dead on arrival, tone deaf argument while we have the problem at the border that we have right now. Like, they are directing attention to trying to fix the border because they know it's only after that gets fixed that our current moment gets fixed, that they can even begin to have a sympathetic conversation about legal immigration, which is a cause they are dedicated to. That is something that they are into doing.
Historically, they've been pro-immigration,
Very
wanting to bring in more
legal,
labor.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly. We're Not Wrong is a production of Dog and Pony Show Audio. Our editor is Will Saddleberg. Again, we're not wrong pod at gmail.com is where you can write in. Mr. Heaton, headmaster of the political orphanage.
Headmaster of the political orphanage. Fun and potentially foreboding topic this week. My friend Maxim Lott, who is doing the Lord's work in terms of just crunching numbers on data. He's a great guy. He's somebody that I turn to regularly when I'm looking at things where I want to know data. So, for example, about a year or two ago, he came on and we did a conversation about just which states actually did best about COVID. Looking at the numbers, and he's a really smart dude. For example, he also, like, looking at other countries, he wouldn't look at the official rates because a lot of the time they lie, but he would look at the death rates, and there'd be wide discrepancies between like what China claimed of people that died from COVID versus the actual death rate. That's the kind of thinker he is. So this week I had on Maxim to talk about the politics of artificial intelligence. One of the things that we're beginning to see right now, if you play around with ChatGPT or anything else, is where is the bias? And you know, it could be intentional. It could just be creeping in because the people that are building it are typically coming out of certain areas. But it's going to be a bigger and bigger deal as artificial intelligence becomes bigger and bigger in our lives. As students rely on it for homework, as I rely on it in prep for this show by typing in, you know, what is the homelessness rate in California, whatever the thing is, right? The bias in that is going to subtly but profoundly affect where conversations go. So I brought on Maxim to talk about the inbuilt bias in artificial intelligence, and he has come up with, I think it's like a daily test that he subjects 15 different artificial intelligence large language models to that determines where they are in terms of politics. And so you can track in real time which ones are the most centrist, which ones are the most progressive, and why that is. And then as a bonus episode, I have on a listener of the show, Sean Boston, where we just get very practical and go how you can use ChatGPT and other large language models in your professional life. So not the abstract, you know, it's going to replace all the attorneys' conversations that we like to have, but a very practical what you can do as a listener, what listeners can do in their own lives in terms of just incorporating this into your day-to-day. So a lot of AI stuff on the political orphanage this week.
Nice.
Cool.
Jen?
So Congressional Dish is still on hiatus, but based on our conversation today, if you haven't heard the most recent episode of Congressional Dish, I think it's worth your time because that's the one where I listened to the hearing from the State Department where they tell you what the goal is in Ukraine. It's very, very eye-opening, and especially if you're planning on watching that interview with Vladimir Putin and Tucker Carlson, I think it will be interesting to look at how far apart the two sides are, and the State Department, what they are saying to Congress is very different from what I think we are being told in general. So it's worth your time. If you haven't checked it out yet, please do.
On PX3, I spent a lonely weekend in Las Vegas because there were no commercials, no political events. You would not know that there were not one but two different election days coming up. And in the episode that I put out Monday, which is a preview for the Nevada primary, I warned that Nikki Haley was making a mistake by not participating in the Nevada primary, even though it would not put out delegates because she was at risk of losing to a ballot line none of these candidates. And last night, as we were recording this, she lost to none of these candidates in the Nevada primary. So listen to that.
Did NOTA win?
None of these candidates. Yeah.
Okay.
None of these candidates got like 65%.
Wow.
And she got like 32%.
This is another fun ballot initiative that I'd like to see is I think every ballot should have a none of the above option. I don't think that it should automatically, like if NOTA wins, it should invalidate because at some point you've got to have people actually step up for office. But if you take the time to actually drive from your home to the ballot precinct to vote, none of the above. I'm taking time out of my day to say it's not that I'm not voting, but I am not voting for any of these people. I would love for that to be just an informational element in American public policy.
Yeah, it was basically a stand-in for Trump. Trump is participating in the Nevada caucus, which is probably happening by the time that this comes out in Nevada. I'll give you the whole reasoning why all of that happened. And if you're confused by it, I explain it all in this episode of PX3. And yeah, that's it. Till next time, for Andrew Heaton and Jen Briney, I'm Justin Robert Young. We're not wrong.